Science is the great antidote to the poison of enthusiasm and superstition. The first thing you have to know is yourself. A man who knows himself can step outside himself and watch his own reactions like an observer. All money is a matter of belief. The real tragedy of the poor is the poverty of their aspirations. Labor was the first price, the original purchase money that was paid for all things. It was not by gold or by silver, but by labor, that all wealth of the world was originally purchased. It is not by augmenting the capital of the country, but by rendering a greater part of that capital active and productive than would otherwise be so, that the most judicious operations of banking can increase the industry of the country. Happiness never lays its finger on its pulse. Consumption is the sole end and purpose of all production, and the interest of the producer ought to be attended to, only so far as it may be necessary for promoting that of the consumer. No complaint is more common than that of a scarcity of money. What can be added to the happiness of a man who is in health, out of debt, and has a clear conscience? Humanity is the virtue of a woman, generosity that of a man. Never complain of that of which it is at all times in your power to rid yourself. On the road from the city of skepticism, I had to pass through the valley of ambiguity. The propensity to truck, barter and exchange one thing for another is common to all men, and to be found in no other race of animals. As soon as the land of any country has all become private property, the landlords, like all other men, love to reap where they never sow, and demand a rent even for its natural produce. With the greater part of rich people, the chief enjoyment of riches consists in the parade of riches. Adventure upon all the tickets in the lottery, and you lose for certain, and the greater the number of your tickets, the nearer your approach to this certainty. Great ambition, the desire of real superiority, of leading and directing, seems to be altogether peculiar to man, and speech is the great instrument of ambition. Resentment seems to have been given us by nature for a defense, and for a defense only. It is the safeguard of justice and the security of innocence. The real and effectual discipline which is exercised over a workman is that of his customers. It is the fear of losing their employment which restrains his frauds and corrects his negligence. I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good. This is one of those cases in which the imagination is baffled by the facts. Little else is requisite to carry a state to the highest degree of opulence from the lowest barbarism, but peace, easy taxes, and a tolerable administration of justice, all the rest being brought about by the natural course of things. Labor was the first price, the original purchase money that was paid for all things. The theory that can absorb the greatest number of facts, and persist in doing so, generation after generation, through all changes of opinion and detail, is the one that must rule all observation. The greatest improvement in the productive powers of labor, and the greater part of the skill, dexterity, and judgment with which it is anywhere directed or applied, seem to have been the effects of the division of labor. Nothing is more graceful than habitual cheerfulness. No society can surely be flourishing and happy of which by far the greater part of the numbers are poor and miserable. It is not very unreasonable that the rich should contribute to the public expense, not only in proportion to their revenue, but something more than in that proportion. By pursuing his own interest, the individual frequently promotes that of the society more effectually than when he really intends to promote it. I have never known much good done by those who affected to trade for the public good. Mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent. A merchant, it has been said very properly, is not necessarily the citizen of any particular country. It is the highest impertinence and presumption, therefore, in kings and ministers to pretend to watch over the economy of private people, and to restrain their expense. They are themselves, always, and without any exception, the greatest spendthrifts in the society. The disposition to admire, and almost to worship, the rich and the powerful, and to despise, or, at least, to neglect persons of poor and mean condition is the great and most universal cause of the corruption of our moral sentiments. Civil government, so far as it is instituted for the security of property, is in reality instituted for the defense of the rich against the poor, or of those who have some property against those who have none at all. Every tax ought to be so contrived as both to take out and to keep out of the pockets of the people as little as possible, over and above what it brings into the public treasury of the state. It appears, accordingly, from the experience of all ages and nations, I believe, that the work done by freemen comes cheaper in the end than that performed by slaves. The world neither ever saw, nor ever will see, a perfectly fair lottery. Virtue is more to be feared than vice, because its excesses are not subject to the regulation of conscience. A power to dispose of estates forever is manifestly absurd. The earth and the fullness of it belongs to every generation, and the preceding one can have no right to bind it up from posterity. Such extension of property is quite unnatural. People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public, or in some contrivance to raise prices. The interest of the dealers, however, in any particular branch of trade or manufactures, is always in some respects different from, and even opposite to, that of the public. To widen the market and to narrow the competition is always the interest of the dealers. Justice, however, never was in reality administered gratis in any country. Lawyers and attorneys, at least, must always be paid by the parties, and, if they were not, they would perform their duty still worse than they actually perform it. How selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature, which interest him in the fortune of others, and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it, except the pleasure of seeing it. Goods can serve many other purposes besides purchasing money, but money can serve no other purpose besides purchasing goods. The division of labor was limited by the extent of the market. Now many such things may be done without entitling the people to rise in arms. A gross, flagrant, and palpable abuse no doubt will do it, as if they should be required to pay a tax equal to half or a third of their substance. The problem with fiat money is that it rewards the minority that can handle money, but fools the generation that has worked and saved money. An instructed and intelligent people are always more decent and orderly than an ignorant and stupid one. In ease of body, peace of mind, all the different ranks of life are nearly upon a level, and the beggar who suns himself by the side of the highway possesses that security which kings are fighting for. It is unjust that the whole of society should contribute towards an expense of which the benefit is confined to a part of the society. Great nations are never impoverished by private, though they sometimes are by public prodigality and misconduct. Corn is a necessary, silver is only a superfluity. Problems worthy of a tax prove their worth by hitting back. Wherever there is great property, there is great inequality. The learned ignore the evidence of their senses to preserve the coherence of the ideas of their imagination. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. What is prudence in the conduct of every private family can scarce be folly in that of a great kingdom. Man is an animal that makes bargains. No other animal does this. No dog exchanges bones with another. The subjects of every state ought to contribute towards the support of the government as nearly as possible in proportion to their respective abilities. The great source of both the misery and disorders of human life seems to arise from overrating the difference between one permanent situation and another. The division of labor, however, so far as it can be introduced, occasions, in every art, a proportionable increase of the productive powers of labor. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own self-interest. To feel much for others and little for ourselves, to restrain our selfishness and exercise our benevolent affections, constitute the perfection of human nature. The real price of everything, what everything really costs to the man who wants to acquire it, is the toil and trouble of acquiring it. We are but one of the multitude, in no respect better than any other in it. All for ourselves, and nothing for other people, seems, in every age of the world, to have been the vile maxim of the masters of mankind.